In 1889, the wealthiest men in America built a private, luxurious playground directly above a working-class city of 30,000 people. When their neglected, cheaply modified dam inevitably collapsed, it killed over 2,000 of them. 4 square miles of Johnstown, Pennsylvania were instantly erased. 1,600 homes gone. 30 acres of the city center crushed under a 40-foot pile of burning timber, rail cars, and barbed wire. Somewhere inside that wreckage, people were still screaming. It remains the deadliest flood in 19th century American history, and the 3rd largest loss of civilian life in a single day, surpassed only by the Galveston hurricane and September 11th. But the real tragedy is not the water. It is what happened after the water receded. The titans of the Gilded Age deployed their own private lawyers, blamed the weather, and paid absolutely nothing. This is the story of America's deadliest man-made catastrophe, and the cover-up that changed American law forever. Johnstown sat at the bottom of a steep Appalachian valley where 2 rivers converged. By 1889, it was a booming industrial city of 30,000 working-class residents, almost entirely employed by the Cambria Iron Company and the Pennsylvania Railroad. The hillsides surrounding the city had been stripped of their ancient forest cover to fuel the iron furnaces. Without trees to absorb rainfall, every major storm funneled straight into the constricted river channels below. Flooding was so routine that shopkeepers simply moved their merchandise to upper floors and waited it out. It was treated as an inconvenience. The real danger was 14 miles upstream, 450 feet above the city. It was the South Fork Dam. Originally an abandoned Pennsylvania Canal reservoir, the dam was purchased in 1879 for $2,000 by a Pittsburgh entrepreneur named Benjamin Ruff. His intention was to transform it into a private retreat for Pittsburgh's industrial elite. The South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club eventually counted over 50 members, including some of the most recognizable names in American history: Andrew Carnegie, Henry Clay Frick, and Andrew Mellon. They stocked the lake with black bass imported from Lake Erie. They built a clubhouse with 48 rooms. They hosted regattas and formal dinners, and they spent exactly $17,000 rebuilding the enormous earthen dam that held back a lake 2 miles long directly above their workers' homes. That single extraordinarily cheap decision would ultimately cost thousands of lives. To understand why the dam failed, you need to understand exactly what the club did to it. The original dam was built using a technique called puddling, where layers of clay are packed down sequentially to create a watertight core. The club's repair crew used mud, brush, and straw. The 5 large cast iron discharge pipes at the base of the dam, the only mechanical system capable of lowering the lake level in an emergency, had been removed and sold for scrap by a previous owner. The club never replaced them. There was now no mechanical way to reduce the water level under any circumstances. They lowered the height of the dam crest by 3 full feet so that 2 horse-drawn carriages could pass side by side on the road across the top. And to prevent their expensive imported fish from escaping into the valley, they bolted iron screens directly across the main spillway. Those screens were, by basic engineering logic, perfect debris traps. Modern hydraulic computer simulations and LiDAR-based volume assessments have confirmed something the club's lawyers worked hard to obscure. The American Society of Civil Engineers published a report in 1891 claiming the dam would have failed regardless of any modifications. Modern hydrologists dispute this directly. Their analysis shows that the original dam design had more than twice the discharge capacity of the club's reconstructed version. A properly maintained dam with its original crest height and functional drainage pipes would likely have survived the coming storm entirely. Thousands of people would have gone to work the next morning. The local Johnstown newspapers had been warning about this dam for a decade. Residents called it a dark standing joke. The people at greatest risk knew the hazard existed. They had no power to compel anyone to fix it. On May 30th, 1889, following the town's Decoration Day parade, time ran out. An unusually powerful storm stalled over the Allegheny Mountains and dropped between 6 and 10 inches of rain on the watershed over 24 hours. It was one of the heaviest rainfall events recorded in 19th century Pennsylvania. By the morning of May 31st, a young engineer named John Park measured the lake rising at 4 to 6 inches per hour. A crew of workers began desperately digging a secondary spillway by hand. The iron fish screens had clogged exactly as basic engineering would predict, cutting off the only remaining route for water to escape the lake and the spillway. At 3:10 in the afternoon, the center of the dam gave way at the exact point of its inadequate 1862 repair. 20 million tons of water drained through the breach in 40 minutes, temporarily reaching the average flow rate of the Mississippi River. The wave consumed the Gautier Ironworks at Woodvale, pulling hundreds of tons of iron cable and miles of barbed wire into the churning mass. At 4:07 in the afternoon, a 35-foot wall of debris moving at 40 miles per hour struck the center of Johnstown without warning. The Pennsylvania Railroad stone bridge held. The debris field that formed against it covered 30 acres. An overturned stove set it on fire. The pile burned for 3 days. Up to 300 people who had survived the initial flood died trapped inside that burning wreckage. When the fire finally went out, the death toll was 2,209, and every single one of the men responsible was already preparing their legal defense. Here is how the wealthiest men in America intended to escape accountability for a catastrophe that destroyed an entire city. Public outrage was immediate and directed squarely at the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. A Pittsburgh widow named Nancy Little sued the club for $50,000 for the loss of her husband. So did dozens of other survivors. Every single lawsuit failed. The club's defense argued the unprecedented rainfall was an act of God. That framing was convenient because two of the high-powered attorneys mounting this defense were prominent club members themselves, Philander Knox and James H. Reed. The victims had to prove direct, explicit negligence under the prevailing law of the era. Because the dam had changed hands multiple times, and because no individual club member had personally ordered the discharge pipes removed or the crest lowered, that proof was legally impossible to establish. Carnegie, Frick, and Mellon paid nothing. The brazen evasion of justice was so widely recognized as an outrage that it forced a permanent change in American law. In the decade following the flood, courts across the country adopted a principle from British legal precedent that American judges had previously ignored. If you accumulate something hazardous on your land and it escapes, you are strictly liable for the damage, regardless of whether you intended it. The entire modern legal framework holding corporations accountable for environmental and industrial disasters traces a direct line back to the people buried in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Today, the earthen abutments of the South Fork Dam still stand in St. Michael, Pennsylvania, managed by the National Park Service as the Johnstown Flood National Memorial. The walk through the ruins trail takes visitors down into the breach itself, across the exact point of failure. In Johnstown's Grandview Cemetery, 777 blank headstones mark the graves of victims who were never identified. The monument at the center of that plot was unveiled on May 31st, 1892, 3 years to the day after the flood. 10,000 people attended. And the club's internal records? The documents that might have shown exactly what Carnegie, Frick, and Mellon knew about the dam's condition and when they knew it. They disappeared in 1917 when the law firm of Knox and Reed moved to new offices. 28 years after the flood, the evidence was gone. Pennsylvania has not forgotten. One question before you go: the club's own lawyers destroyed the only documents that could have proven what they knew. Does that sound like an act of God to you? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more abandonment documentaries from across America.